Hello everybody, welcome back. So we're going to talk about Bill C-11 here. We're going to hear a little speech by a government official here about this, and this is what we need to hear. We have to keep fighting back because Justin Trudeau and his admiration for the Chinese government is starting to come through here. He wants to censor all Canadian social media, where it's only going to be what they want us to see, what the government wants you to hear. Wow, right? Let's check out this video. I got some cool links in my pinned comment below as well. Some people might find it useful. Check it out. So we have to fight, stay vigilant, and support those that respect our views. Let's do this.
Bill C-11 is yet another attempt by the Liberals to regulate what Canadians can say and see on the internet by granting unprecedented powers to the CRTC with, importantly, no clear guidelines or limits on how that power will be used. The minister has made many claims about C-11. He says it protects Canadian identity and culture, that it will help promote diversity and marginalized groups in Canada. He says it will tell Canada's story to the world. These objectives are commendable, but the big problem is that Bill C-11 will actually accomplish none of them. Instead, it will threaten the viability of Canadian digital content creators, stifle innovation, and grant unprecedented new powers to the CRTC to dictate what Canadians can read, what they can listen to, and what they can say and see on the internet. Like its predecessor C-10, this bill C-11 is not about promoting Canadian content, but is really about censoring views and ideas that the Liberal government doesn't like, all under the auspices of strengthening Canadian culture. The bill's so-called discoverability provisions will essentially push content in front of Canadians if that content is considered Canadian enough, whether people want to see it or not. If it fails to pass the government's definition of Canadian, it will be pushed down in the queue where it can't be found. The CRTC will essentially decide which content creators succeed, what content you see, and what content you don't see. And the minister has recently declared that he alone will develop rules on what content is defined as Canadian. That's a pretty shocking revelation that he considers himself the single arbiter of national identity. It's especially disconcerting since the NDP Liberal government is also currently developing an online harms bill, which has been so shrouded in secrecy that only recently an access to information request uncovered thousands of pages of negative comments by stakeholders. Critics warned the original Liberal government plan would amount to censorship. I understand a new proposal is now being put forward. Given all of the criticism, it would apparently place the onus on digital platforms to deal with harmful content. Based on Liberal government's track record, no one should believe that this proposal will pose less of a threat to individual liberties than their other ideas, but I'm not sure how they will tackle real online harm, say like non-consensual or child sexual abuse material, which is often not enforced through platforms right now. On Bill C-11, thousands of Canadian artists, content creators, and policy experts have voiced extreme opposition. They point out that pushing content to viewers who aren't interested in it will actually harm Canadian creators because the algorithms will penalize content that viewers don't interact with. Justin Tomchuk, a Canadian producer who operates two very successful YouTube channels, noted, quote, "Our channels have highlighted Canadian products for the world to see and purchase. Unfortunately, Bill C-11 would make that more difficult and potentially destroy our visibility internationally." Dr. Irene Berkowitz, a senior policy fellow at Toronto Metropolitan University's Audience Lab, told the committee, quote, "It's very risky, actually, for a small country like Canada to encourage this kind of model of prioritizing your own content. The benefits are pretty meager if we make it work for our local content, and the risk, if a larger country like France were to do the same thing, is enormous to us." Morgan Fortier, the co-owner and CEO of Skyship Entertainer, creator of Canada's most watched YouTube channel, said that C-11 is a, quote, "bad piece of legislation that, quote, has been written by those who don't understand the industry they're attempting to regulate, and because of that, they've made it incredibly broad. It mistakes platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook for broadcasters like the CBC, Netflix, and Amazon Prime. It doesn't understand how those platforms operate, and it ignores the fundamental importance of global discoverability." Those same points points echo around the Canadian art scene. Scott Benzie, the managing director of Digital First Canada, which advocates for digital content creators, said, quote, "Most concerning about C-11 is that there is still room in the bill for the government to force platforms to put approved Canadian content ahead of independent Canadian content and artificially manipulate the algorithms. Even in the best case scenario, this bill only has downsides for digital first creators, while the traditional media industry gets their funding doubled. So the reality is that traditional broadcasters like the CBC would receive more funding under Bill C-11, while independent innovators driving Canadian digital leadership will be left behind. Not only will C-11 not promote Canadian digital content or strengthen Canadian culture, its discoverability provisions will stifle innovation and impose severe restrictions on what content Canadians can access. During committee, the campaign director of advocacy group Open Media, Matt Hatfield, said, quote, "Manipulating our search results and feeds to feature content the government prefers instead of other content is gross paternalism that doesn't belong in a democratic society." There really is no better definition of censorship than what the Liberal government is trying to do in C-11. Censorship is at its very core. And the Liberals even use censorship to cut off debate and ram through an unprecedented 150 amendments to the bill with no discussion or explanation. Over the last 2 weeks, the Liberals have effectively censored its own censorship bill. Canadians will remember the fiasco of Bill C-10, which the Liberals introduced last year. Under Bill C-10, people's everyday expressions, which could include pictures, audio, and video, would have been magically turned into broadcasting programs when transmitted by third parties like social media firms over the internet, unless the CRTC or a cabinet policy directive said otherwise. Almost any individual-generated content would become subject to regulation. That's why internet law expert Michael Geist called Bill C-10 an unconscionable attack on the online free expression of Canadians. As the Liberals stifled debate and used tactics like closure on C-10, Conservatives did propose amendments to protect individual users and smaller players in the market by exempting streaming services and social media users with lower revenues. But the Liberals rejected that common sense compromise. Now the minister claims this new Bill C-11 addresses the concerns about Bill C-10 and that Canadians can be assured that regulating user-generated content on the internet is now off the table. But that's just not true. In fact, when asked at committee hearings about whether Bill C-11 includes the potential for regulating user content, the CRTC chair, Ian Scott, acknowledged, quote, "As constructed, there is a provision that would allow us to do it as required." The Liberals have tried to pull the wool over everyone's eyes with Bill C-11 by apparently reintroducing some original safeguards while at the same time introducing a new provision which effectively negates the safeguards. I think we all agree with the goal of updating Canada's Broadcasting Act and bringing it in line with the realities of the 21st century. Conservatives have said repeatedly that we support creating a level playing field between large foreign streaming services and Canadian broadcasters. But Conservatives believe we can achieve that reform while also protecting individual rights and without turning the CRTC into an all-powerful censure board with almost no limits to its regulatory authority. Should Canadians entrust this Prime Minister and this government with the power to regulate what Canadians say and see? Let's look at their track record. There's been many examples of this particular Prime Minister cracking down on those with whom he disagrees, from former senior ministers who defended the principle of judicial independence, like the Honourable Jody Wilson-Raybould, to denigrating and demeaning fellow Canadians who want their freedom back, and to end federal mandates and helping perpetuate misinformation and fake news about them, their motives, and their actions. This Prime Minister has actually called Canadians who disagree with him un-Canadian. So is it any wonder that Canadians would be skeptical about his plans for the cabinet appointments who will define Canadian content for regulation? His penchant for using the unbridled power of the state against individual Canadians is embodied in C-11 and in coming legislation the Liberals will claim is necessary. But stakeholder groups that have been involved in consultations so far have called the Liberals' proposals dangerous, with the possibility of expanding the powers of regulators over time and significantly impacting the free expression and privacy rights of Canadians. My constituents are clear about their views on the Liberal government's heavy-handed attempts to regulate and control what Canadians are allowed to say and see on the internet. They've told me they don't agree with the Liberal government's censorship measures. No government agency responsible for broadcasting in a free and democratic society should have the kinds of powers and unchecked discretion as are proposed in Bill C-11. Canadians have fought and died to defend rights to freedom of thought and expression. In a society that cherishes these values, Bill C-11 leaves the door open for real abuses of power against the free expression rights of Canadians. So my Conservative colleagues and I will remain steadfast in working to stop this NDP Liberal government from taking away the free expression individual rights of Canadians. In its present form, we oppose Bill C-11, given the potential for it to establish a regime of censorship, control, and regulation while not achieving the outcomes its proponents purport. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Hello, fellow adventurers. Are you tired of lugging around those big, heavy, and noisy generators on your camping trips? Well, you're in luck. The Blue Eddy generator is here to make your life easier and your camping experience more enjoyable. Let me tell you, these generators are game changers. They're ultra portable and lightweight, making them perfect for taking on the go. And don't be fooled by their small size. These little guys pack a powerful punch. You can power up your devices, lights, and even small appliances like blenders or coffee makers, all with ease. But here's the best part. The Blue Eddy generators are super quiet. That's right, no more noisy interruptions to your peaceful camping experience. You can power up your gadgets without disturbing the peace and quiet of the great outdoors. And the utility of these generators doesn't stop there. They're also great for emergency backup power during power outages or natural disasters. Keep your lights on and your devices charged, no matter what life throws your way. So why settle for those clunky, noisy, and heavy generators when you can have a portable and powerful solution that makes your camping life easy? In our pinned comments, you will find a link to Blue Eddy. Check them out today.